And we're live in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome to the first episode of the Bayat Beat.
Nice.
I am your lovely MC and host, MC Devi. I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, my mother over here, the talented Reverend Summer El Bayati,
Hey.
and over here my grandmother, the matriarch Barbara El Bayati.
Yeah.
Hello.
This is a Bayat Beat, exposing the truth as we see it. This is the podcast where a son, a mother of one, and a grandmother of three open up each other's eyes to the Matrix. Look at the modern day world from the perspective of three different generations, follow, laugh, and brilliantly analyze the tragic comedy we know as the human experience.
Ole.
So I guess the first question would be what our topic is deceptions of the media, or quote fake news, as certain people like to call it. The first question I have here is, having lived through the 20th century, what was your experience with fake news during World War II, grandmother, quote, yellow journalism, as they called it back then, and up until post 9/11?
Wow. Well, I was a child in World War II, so I do remember whenever we went to the movie theaters, there would be short newscasts, and yes, the journalism was quite yellow. There would be little film things of Japanese kamikaze pilots just leering about the damage they were going to do, and of course those were staged, but we didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so it was to the extent that when eventually Japanese restaurants started opening up in this country, I was surprised. I love Japanese food. I love many things about Japanese culture. But it was shocking to me that we had forgiven the Japanese to the extent that we could eat Japanese food and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I always hoped that the same would happen for Arabic food.
Yeah.
We're kind of on our way there, but there's still a lot of prejudice against Arabs. So.
And I would say that that's for a lot of minorities in this country, coming from being oppressed by the West.
Yes.
To some extent, they come here and, there's liberalism, not as much oppression towards them, where they open businesses, and then sometimes there's some oppression still there.
Yes. And with the Japanese, of course, we're the ones who dropped the atomic bombs on two of their major cities. Unnecessarily, I believe. And it wasn't that the Japanese were entirely innocent in World War II. But we managed to assist them in rebuilding, and their society changed. Ours, I think we had some good intentions toward some peoples in those days. We also helped with Germany and rebuilding, and we helped much of Europe rebuild through the Marshall Plan. And what's been shocking to me is that we went into Iraq and demolished it. And all the money we said was to go to rebuilding, the money disappeared.
Well, there's that fake news.
Yes.
Like Iraq has mass weapons of nuclear.
Weapons of mass
destruction.
Yes.
And turns out they don't. That was just a call
Now,
to arms.
I will say that most people who are well grounded in the field of Middle Eastern studies knew that it was fake news.
Yeah.
But such people were not allowed a public voice.
Yeah.
And that's been a great frustration, although we kind of expect that now.
That's what we were talking about earlier, which was the oppressors give the news. And why would
Yes.
you believe the news from your oppressor or
Exactly.
the elite, etc.? Why would you, if Israel is posting the news, why would the Palestinians believe what they say? And the same goes for any group. If way back when, the whites were posting the news, why should the blacks believe it in this country? It's the same concept.
Yes.
And still today, I mean, we see many oppressions within our own country here, and still the ones in power and controlling the narrative are the whites. So when you have persons of color getting into government, it doesn't mean it's going to be smooth sailing, because they continue to be attacked from the perspective or from the fake news institution, right? And so they keep getting attacked and keep getting attacked and keep getting attacked, so that whatever they're saying that may be of major importance, saying, hey, you're oppressing these groups, in this city, we have the majority of this group and they're experiencing oppressions, and it gets skewed via fake news, right? It gets skewed. Fake news being linked to things like rumors, right? Earlier there was a discussion that I was having about, how people have a tendency to enjoy this thing called gossip, right? People have inside of them this ability to be good and be bad, right? And so when that happens, it could come out in the form of something like gossip. Oh, did you hear about so-and-so? Oh, her husband left.
Rumors.
Exactly.
Lies.
And then what ends up happening is that can take the form of fake news, right? So it's just these rumors, it's just this gossip, and it's this inherent tendency within human beings to want to do that.
Okay, I'm gonna say for a sec, can you move the mics a little farther?
Sure.
Because I'm picking up a lot of.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Well, I'm, when I'm out of town, out of the state of California, I am rather frequently asked about this invasion of our southern border and how I feel about it, and if I feel threatened. And I try to explain that no, I don't feel threatened, and I hadn't heard that we are being invaded by any reliable source.
Yeah.
So what is going on the border? I don't really know at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think anybody knows. I think you have to go down there and see. And I think what a lot of reports that, we've heard from people that were down there is it's chill. There's no,
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that was a couple years ago. I don't know what it's like today in this era of the U.S., but a couple years ago it was pretty chill.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what does that mean that they are thinking we're being invaded? Invaded by whom? I mean, way back when California belonged to Mexico. So I'm sorry, what? Well, we're being invaded by those who are indigenous to this state, to this part of the United States, right?
Well, yeah, I accept that most of the the people on the caravans, and those caravans, they drop people along the way so that not that many people end up getting close to the border. But they're not necessarily from Mexico. They're coming through Mexico from other parts of Central America.
Poorer parts. Yeah.
Like Honduras and Guatemala and so on.
Yeah.
But I mean, so this idea of, there's this concept called the borderlands, right? And you have people that are indigenous to both, right? California and Mexico, the United States and Mexico.
Right.
And they're being blocked from migrating back and forth like they used to, and going and seeing their family.
Yeah, well,
and so
certain Indian tribes, yeah.
Right. So what of this sort of this? They end up being in this category of where do we belong, right? That liminal space.
Yeah. Something that a lot of minorities feel, especially when you put a ban on a certain group coming in and out of the country. Like, I want to go visit my family and so. There was that senator who wanted to visit her grandmother in Palestine.
I think, is she a senator? I think she's a congresswoman.
Congresswoman. And they're like, well, the Israeli government's like, well, you gotta not say anything bad when you come here. And she's like, no, I'm not gonna do. At first she agreed, and then she's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is, taxing on my freedom of speech.
Right.
It's not fair.
And I'm an American citizen, and we are big on freedom of speech. That's, a biggie in this country. And then you're telling me to go to another country and silence myself, right?
Which is fake news. The silence is fake news.
It is.
And we're getting in this era of what do you believe, especially with all these voice changers and facial recognition software where you can pretend you're Obama or George Bush or Donald Trump saying things, and then it goes on the internet. And then you also have journalists just spreading fake news and clickbait and stuff to catch your eye so they get ad revenue, because that's all they care about.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, so we're entering this era of who do I trust and what do I trust? It's scary, but it's a reality. Do I go directly to the scholars that are, doing actual research and trust them? Or do I keep scrolling through social media where I get most of my news and trust that? Because a lot of what the media produces is by the conquerors. They are the conquerors, and they want to oppress through fear. And that's something we need to understand, that this is an ancient concept that is still being used today. We're not completely, gone from it. Like, when was the civil rights era? In the 60s? What is that, 50 years ago? Maybe a little more? We're not totally far, and I think that's what people forget.
Well, actually, we made quite a bit of progress in civil rights, but we're going backward,
Yeah.
which is, again, very shocking to me because I really had hoped for the best for this country.
Mhm.
I mean, I do believe that all people should have rights, and I don't care whether someone is a citizen or not a citizen. Having the right to due process. I think everyone should have the right to health care because health care is a public issue.
Yeah.
If you
Human
have
right.
certain parts of the populace, whether they're citizens or not citizens, who can't get health care, that puts the rest of us at risk.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
there are other nation states where a person who is just a tourist can get free health care.
Yeah.
And that's for the good of everyone.
For a healthy environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to return back to the social media. You talked about people getting their news from social media, right? They're scrolling through things like Facebook. Do people post news-worthy articles on Instagram as well? Things like that?
You have to follow journalists.
Okay. Well,
But-
okay. So I'm just going to use Facebook as an example. Or YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us have YouTube app on our iPhone?
Twitter.
Exactly. So the problem is it's following your behavior, right? So it's using technology, right? What do they call those, bots, or what do they call that?
Algorithm. It uses
Algorithm. Use an algorithm to see what you might like, right? You look at what is the title of it? Oh, that looks good. Oh, wow, I'm going to put a like, or I'm going to put a sad face, or I'm going to put an angry face, right? Or I'm going to put a heart. And people are not clicking on the article. They're not reading it. They're not seeing whether it is actually a piece of journalism that's worthy and in which you really can, rely upon, right? Which gets to journalists and whether journalists are doing good work and doing journalism or contributing to fake news and this fake news industry, right? But social media is creating this this way of being, I think, in the world of people saying, okay, I'm just gonna ingest whatever I can, scrolling through here. Oh, this article looks good. Oh, it has 20 likes from people that I like, so I'm going to say that I like it, or, I'm going to share it, but I'm not going to look at, was this good research? Was this based on good research? What are the sources, right?
Well, and the problem is, I think a lot of people don't even know how to tell if it's actually research. I'll tell you, when I was in high school, I could tell like half of the articles and journalism just wasn't legitimate. People weren't going to the New York Times or the Sacramento Bee, these scholarly journalistic, websites. They were just scrolling on the first thing they see and thinking it's trustworthy. But
like, that needs to be incorporated, that ability to discern whether something is truthful, representative, the ability to fact check, that should be taught in all
high schools.
Not just high school. I think it should be taught starting in elementary school.
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
Elementary, middle school, high school. Oh, yeah. I definitely have my students learn, that you must only research. I would only allow them to research and reference articles that were scholarly. I mean, we're talking from universities. And I started them off with that so that they could get used to doing that, so that when they get into higher education, they will automatically do that.
And this has become kind of a role for librarians. to teach people how to fact check has become a very important role. And I think that's good. I was fortunate growing up in a family where you got challenged if you just said something off the top of your head.
Fake news.
That's good.
If you fake newsed it.
If you fake news
Yeah, if you came home with a story, even if it's something you read in your textbook.
Oh.
There was a lot of just untrue stuff in the textbooks.
Yes.
And I'm looking at this and I'm going, wait, I grew up in a Muslim household. I know more than this textbook, and that is not true.
Right. Right. So now there were Muslim councils formed to fact check textbooks in the state of California.
Yeah, that's good.
But I think in the California legislature right now, there's a bill kind of, I'm not saying it's criticizing that process, it's criticizing the textbooks. Because they don't favor Israel.
Wow.
And because they've attempted to be truthful. So we're always dealing with it. It's a constant in our lives, and I wish it would go away, but I guess it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
But the only thing we can do is fight back and challenge people. And we had a conversation today where we probably should have challenged the speaker. And
but we were in a hurry.
Yeah,
we got to get the podcast running.
Well, you need to demand critical thinking.
Yeah.
And it starts in education. It starts when they're younger, to teach them to critically think. And there's a lot of critical thinking out there happening. I mean, I think there really is. I'm pleased at what I see, as long as kids are being educated to do so. And I think that's important. I teach to always question, because in that questioning, you are using critical thinking skills, right? Even if you're not to question just for the sake of questioning, to be a jerk about
belligerent.
it. Yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Like really, really deeply questioning. Okay, where does this come from? Okay, what does this mean? How do we, if I saw, can I see it a different way, right? And then really evaluating and analyzing and doing the research to see whether that is true or not true. Make up your own mind, but don't just go, oh well, my family says it's so it must be so. How many households, how many kids out there just parrot whatever their family says?
Most kids.
Right. Yeah. But if you really get them to analyze where they came up with that and why they think that, they start to break it down and they start to see, wow, I really don't believe that.
Yeah.
And that's when you unleash their voice. And that's what we need to do more of, We need
to teach kids and people to look at something objectively and determine whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
Because there's too much of people telling us what's right or wrong. It's like our intuition knows more than external sources.
Right.
And that gets back to, what should we be teaching in schools, really?
Critical thinking, for sure.
For sure.
And not to believe all the fake news that you hear out there, because that's just propaganda. And then teaching them what is propaganda and why is propaganda around, and what has that been used for historically, going back to when you were a kid in World War II, right? All that propaganda that was promoted in the movie theater to have you all support a war,
Yeah.
a war effort. And so who's controlling the narrative there? That would be the government, right? And you hear more and more of this now. I think I was listening to the interview with Stephen Colbert, Anderson Cooper, and I think that was alluded to as well, that sort of controlling the narrative. and who's doing it.
Yeah. And it's not just the government, it's people who have been influenced by the government or maybe more, leaning the one side areas, like Tom Clancy, for example.
I haven't read him, by the way. I know about
Yeah,
him.
but he has books and video games, and they are all skewed towards America being the heroes and the Middle East or whatever third world country being demonized.
Yeah.
And that's what propaganda is today. It's this subtle influence. It's not just posters,
Yeah.
from World War II.
I remember when we were in the process of invading Iraq in 2003. We had partly invaded them earlier, but in 2003. And a journalist who was there, and I don't remember who it was, but this person was quite good, was interviewing an American soldier in the south somewhere of Iraq. And the soldier told her that these people are so ignorant, but they could be brought along. Okay, they just needed some more education. And the woman said, that is, the journalist woman said, but this. Have you ever heard of Hammurabi? This is the place where civilization started, where the first laws were given down, which had major societies. But the soldier said, well, but they don't have malls. Shopping malls make people civilized.
Wow.
Now, Iraq, at the time that we invaded in 2003, had an extremely high literacy rate, higher than our own in the United States. I think it's been reduced somewhat in the last 10 or 15 years because people weren't letting their kids go to school because it was too dangerous. But that's probably going to be reversing itself. And Iraq also had the highest percentage of PhDs. This was not an ignorant society at all, but everybody believed it was ignorant and the people were inherently bad. I think you had back in the first invasion, you had a professor at the University of California, Irvine, who challenged you because you were Iraqi in his class. What happened?
What happened? Well, I had to drop that class, first of all, but
He was referring to the Bible, wasn't he? The Assyrians of the Bible.
I don't remember the context. I just remember the experience of being pointed out as my ancestors having killed whomever he was lecturing about at that time, and pointing me out to hundreds of people in the class. It was a big lecture hall, so that was nice to be outed. Culturally and ethnically at a time when we were looking to invade this country. So that was really difficult. That didn't mean that I was like hiding, I mean, I clearly understand that for some people I'm passing being a halvesy, right? So some people may not even know that, but I did participate in the Arab Student Association at UCI. So, it wasn't like I was like hiding from my culture or anything, but it was not fair to do that to a student, an undergraduate student who's just there to learn and have knowledge. And because she shared a piece of information with the professor, does that give him a right to point her out as being this demon culture, and demonizing all Iraqis and by my being half Iraqi, therefore I should be demonized as well.
And he was demonizing you based on the Old Testament.
Okay, well,
And
there you
I
go.
found out a number of years later, there was an article about him in which he was saying that he had worked with the Mossad on many projects.
Well, there you go.
So,
But it's I mean, racism is prevalent. Like I mean, we all see it. I mean, it is everywhere. It's even prevalent among those who would help, who are from primarily. I'm just gonna say primarily the what's referred to as the oppressive culture, right? So here it would be white, right? So even with white liberals, you can experience racism because even if they're liberal, right?
yeah.
Because they have been socialized, they've been a part of this culture, and this culture, continues to perpetuate and propagandize and back.
Yeah, can you move your mic farther away?
Farther away. I talk too loud, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a big problem, because we have people who are now using this concept of fake news, right? This concept of fake news to have us believe, and have parts of the country believe, that we're all being invaded right now, for instance, right? And so when you go to various states in this country that are not very far away from California, let's put it that way, that can happen, right? Where they're asking you, as you said, they're asking you, hey, what's going on over there? Y'all being invaded, isn't that scary?
Well, and then there's the issue, speaking of our friends among the majority population, our liberal and progressive friends. For years, I've had to, I was married to your father, your grandfather, for almost 53 years. And people acted as though he was the exception to the rule.
Right.
That Arab Muslim men always oppressed their wives, except for him. He was the exception.
Because he's been Americanized. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Well, you've been Americanized, so you have learned
We're not
to
talking
be like
about
how
you.
we are.
Yeah,
right.
we're not talking about you. It's the others, all the others.
And they did that with people who were American, raised in America.
Right.
They did that with blacks.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
From here.
Oh yeah.
You're the exception of the black caucus.
Exactly. Exactly.
The more that you participate in our narrative, the more that you participate in our white culture and act white, and the more that we accept you. When you don't, then we will let you know it.
But you still have to sit down and be quiet.
Yeah. Now, I didn't do that growing up. So I got comments like, you're not American. Like, you don't act American.
What?
Yeah.
What is
Born
American?
and raised. Yeah.
You mean I don't act
Exactly.
white
Right.
because I care about
Other
persons
cultures.
of color?
Yes.
You know what I
Right,
mean? And I
yes.
care about my culture, and I stand up
Right.
for what I believe, and I voice my opinion, and I talk against fake news.
Right. And there it goes, right? So if you go against what everybody else is claiming we're supposed to do, everybody else participating within the fake news narrative, right? If you challenge it, you're not really American, really.
Yeah, you're in your own group.
Yeah. Go back to your country,
Yeah.
right?
Go back where
Exactly.
you came
Go
from.
back where you came from, and you're like, my mom's womb?
My mom's womb?
Mm,
Or
okay.
Newport Beach.
Right.
Which
That's
one?
where I was born. Yeah.